Coming up on this episode of the Hockey Nuts, Steve and I get you caught up with all of the news of the week around the hockey world. The NHL regular season is underway, and Steve and I are thrilled that there are finally actual games to talk about. You'll be surprised at some of the teams who find themselves both at the top and the bottom of the standings. We'll have all the details of all this, plus the minor league minute and our picks of the week, coming up next. This is the Hockey Nuts Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9, recorded on Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. Who's in first place?
Shut up and sit down.
You know, this can win you hockey games.
McAvoy sizzles it to Pastrnak, fakes the shot low for Krejci with Marchand in front. Krejci holds, gets Subban down on one knee. Krejci fakes the pass. McAvoy fans on the shovel. Now switches with Pastrnak. Pasternak's blast scores! David Pastrnak! Only one man comes back. It's still a Boston power play.
To Zuccarello. Back for Buchnevich, trying to deflect it on goal while Varlamov made a save. Out to Shattenkirk for a drive save. Rebound off the post. Here's Shattenkirk. Down low. Score! Mika Zibanejad. It's a power play goal.
What puck control by the Rangers.
Bill Peters, fourth season, looking to get his team to relevance and in the playoffs. Off the draw, Marcus Kruger. Stand-up save, Stalock, rebound. He got the pad down. He's fishing. It's loose. They score! Brock McGinn never gave up on the play, and Carolina has tied it.
We all know that the preseason is a different animal than the regular season.
Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here with Steve. How's it going once again, Steve?
Hey, it's going great, Wayne. Good afternoon to you. And I am very excited once again to talk hockey with you, especially as we see this season starting to unfold. There's a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. We were together on Friday, and here it is Tuesday, and a wealth of stuff has happened.
Yep, we've had 5 days worth of games that have taken place. Well, really 4 days. Today would be day 5 of worth of games to talk about, and a lot has happened. And on the ice, anyway, there's been more that's happened in the last 5 days than there has the last 2 months combined. Because obviously we had nothing going on in the offseason. And the thing that jumps out at me right now is the standings. What a bizzarro situation we're in right now with the standings. We've got teams like Vegas and Vancouver and Colorado at the top of the standings.
Yeah.
And then the Sharks, Preds, and Stars are at the bottom. What kind of world have we discovered here?
It's been a wild start. I got my pocket schedules on order the other day, and the guy at Madison Square Garden shot me a question. He goes, "Hey, what do you think about the Rangers start?" And I was surprised, but that was very kind of him. And I said, well, I think it's going to take a few games to get the kinks out. He goes, the Rangers always start slow, and it's true. Just about every year, if you look back at, and I'm just talking about a team I'm very familiar with. The Rangers always start slow. The first 10 games, we're looking to try and be above 500.
Yep.
But it's no different this year. But I think you're going to start to see some of these teams come on that we've said and expect to be good teams, and some have really come out of the gates flying, like Toronto.
Yep.
But I think you're going to see other teams, and St. Louis is out of the gates strong. Chicago is playing great hockey. But other teams like Pittsburgh, who is sputtering, you'll see them start to pick up, and it might take a little while, but they'll get going again,
Yep.
So,
and it almost seems like the teams that went deeper into the playoffs, at least second round or later into the playoffs,
right.
You see the vast majority of them are the ones that are struggling at the bottom of the standings, whereas teams that have been off teams that even missed the playoffs are the ones that are doing well right now. So I guess that goes to show how much rest these players really do need in the summer to get themselves recouped and recovered and ready for the next season, whereas the stronger teams are off to slow starts. But But yeah, there's been a lot of crazy score games. There's been, and I think a lot of that is attributed to the quote unquote rule changes. We call them rule changes, but a lot of them is just enforcing of rules that are already in the books. So and teams are still trying to adjust to the new standard. Right.
And they're also adjusting internally, Wayne. I look at the Rangers, Dan Girardi had been the defensive, if you will, the long-standing, he's been on the Rangers for 11 years as a defenseman. And you're looking at Derek Stepan on the offensive side of it, 7 years as a center for the Rangers, most of those years starting on the first line. So when those two players trade, you've got to have players step up into their position and assume their new role, get involved in the system and the structure of the offense and defense. That takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And you have to play games, official games, for that to really, you can scrimmage all you want, but when you play games, that's when things really change. And that's what I think we're seeing as you do every year. That's part of, at least from a Rangers perspective, what's going on internally with the team.
Yeah, and new line combinations. Every team's got a few rookies, some more than others. There's a lot of stuff in the early part of the season that teams are desperately trying to get things in order and not get too far behind in the standings.
Right.
Because we've seen it in the past. You can't win in October, but you certainly can lose in October in terms of making it to the playoffs. So. All right. Well, before we get into the meat of the podcast, let's just remind everybody you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Google Play Music, Player.fm, Spreaker, whatever Adobe and Apple app that you may be using. Of course, Apple has their podcast app, and they're making changes to the newer iOS 11. The newer phones have more in the way of podcasting capabilities. And so it makes us very excited, too, because the word is getting out that podcasts are a great way to get whatever that you personally feel are missing in your life in terms of, audio listening material. Everybody has their car radio, but the car radio, particularly sports radio, if you live like where we live, our sports talk radio is nothing but college football, college basketball, Carolina Panthers, and that's pretty much it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
College basketball really rules that.
Yeah, especially now that season's starting to wind up. So we don't really have any sports talk radio like you do in Canada, where you turn on sports talk radio and they're talking about hockey all the time. Now, granted, depending on what city you are in Canada, they're either talking Leafs or Canadiens or, Edmonton, Vancouver, whatever. So they're primarily focused on their local team, but at least it's hockey. Here in the Carolinas, we don't have that. Yes, the local team or the local sports channel out of Raleigh that I listen to, they're partially owned by the same company that owns, a bunch of, I think they own, the company that owns that station also owns, I think, WRAL. I think there's a tie in there. I could be wrong about that. And that company also owns the Durham Bulls, and they have a stake in they have a minority ownership in the Carolina Hurricanes as well. So they've got a vested interest to talk about the Canes, but they don't do it but maybe 5 minutes out of every hour of local coverage they have. And then when they're not on local coverage, they're on ESPN. So anyway, podcasts are a great way to replace that content. So if you want to hear more hockey, you can subscribe to Hockey Podcasts. There's dozens of them out there. There's team-specific ones. You can find them on all these platforms, and we're a part of all these platforms. Now, our show, obviously, is more of, yeah, we talk about the Rangers and the Bruins and the Canes a lot, but we also talk about the other 28 teams in the league as much as we possibly can, particularly when there's anything newsworthy. So we try to be a mixed bag here with our podcast, and we don't try to cater to any one particular team's fan group or one particular league for that matter, because we do talk college hockey, American League, KHL, and that as well when there's stories to talk about there. So we're just kind of a broad range of hockey topics, trying to hit on the headlines more than anything.
Right.
And just give you the content that you may be missing. Some people don't have time to scour the internet for stories, hockey-related stories, and we just kind of curate that, bring it to you in the form of an audio podcast, keeping it clean, because there's a lot of podcasts out there that are dropping F-bombs like popping candy. It's we keep it clean, so we like to, we're proud of the fact that you can listen to our podcast without with small children in the car and not have to wear headphones. So that's a part of our podcast that we like as well. So anyway,
I think I said to you too, Wayne, real quick, 15 months ago, if you'd have told me what a podcast was or anything like that, our show isn't even 15 months old, and we're doing very well. But I am not an ESPN or NBC analyst. I'm just a hockey fan, and I'm just giving my perspective and information as I see it. I guess if I was paid to do more in-depth stuff on our podcast, I definitely make a stab at it and do it. But, we're just hockey fans relating news stories and trying to be informative to our listeners as best we know how.
Yep.
And certainly would love to hear from people if we can do a better job in an area that you would prefer. So that's all I had to say.
Yep. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us through our Twitter handles. I'm at WayneHalley9. Steve is at SBall504man. And our email address is at feedback@thehockeynuts.com. You can reach us through our Facebook page at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel at thehockeynuts.com/YouTube. Now, we do live stream the recording of the podcast each week. I know it's hard to catch us live because we're, especially right now, lately, we've been kind of all over the map on what day we're recording, what time, and so on. But generally, our time to record is Thursday nights at right around 6 o'clock. Now, we haven't hit that target recently because of our own personal schedules, but that is the time that we aim for, and then we have to adjust accordingly. But we always do keep a copy of it on the YouTube channel, so if you do want to watch us actually make the podcast, you can watch us there. And also, I put a copy of the audio up there as well, so if you happen to not have a way to get the podcast otherwise, you can actually listen to it on your computer or whatever device through your YouTube app, and just put the phone in your pocket while you're listening to it. So that's why I put the audio up there as well, because some people we do get a few people that are listening to us that way as well. So, all right, let's move on to the news of the week.
Very good.
And of course, we always start off by talking about our three teams that we cover most closely. And first and foremost, the Boston Bruins. They only had one game over the weekend. They lost to Colorado 4-0 yesterday. Yesterday was Monday. There were 3 afternoon games yesterday, which is unusual for a Monday.
Yep.
But it's Columbus Day in the U.S. It's also Thanksgiving weekend up there in Canada. So you had a lot of people that were off all weekend long on a long weekend. And there were 3 matinee games. The Bruins were one of them. And I think the Bruins forgot that they had a day game because, they didn't do too well. They lost 4-0 to Colorado in a matinee game, and it just Varlamov played great in that game. Tuukka Rask was very shaky, I guess would be the nicest way to say it. The Bruins outshot Colorado, so the overall, the Bruins, I don't know. It just seemed like it's not the same team that we saw in the first game, we'll put it that way. Right. They didn't come out with the energy level that they had in game 1.
Right. Columbus Day is a funny one, Wayne, and there's always matinee games. And if your team gets picked to play one of the afternoon games, it can be weird because it's kind of like you're playing on a holiday like Thanksgiving day, and yet everybody's working. Now, I did used to work for a company where I got Columbus Day off, but it's more than not. It's a Catholic holiday, but getting to the point, if your team is starting the season like this, you can easily fall into the doldrums.
Yep.
And Semyon Varlamov has not been in the doldrums at all here to start the year. He's playing very, very well. Colorado can pretty much thank their 2 wins to him.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, they're 2-1.
They're 2-1. Yep.
Yeah. So he's playing very, very well. So that can happen to anybody. It happened to us. We lost 3-2 to them. So.
Yep. So, yeah, that was pretty much it for the Bruins for the week. So now the Bruins are 1-1 on the season, and they go into Colorado tomorrow night. They play in Colorado this time in a rematch and try to get, hopefully, at least even that season series up with them. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes also played just one game, and it was actually their first and so far only game of the year. So we have a very small sample size on the Hurricanes. But they won that game 5-4 in overtime, in a shootout, with Minnesota at home back on the 8th. That was Saturday. Yeah,
right.
Every team played Saturday except Boston. So Saturday was their game, and they were down 3-1 at one point and came out with enough energy in the third period to eventually tie the game. They actually took the lead 4-3 with about 3 minutes left in the game, and then they had that controversial goal right at the 1 second mark, or less than it was like 0.4 of a second when Minnesota knocked the puck in. And I went on a bit of a rampage. I think I even tweeted about it, that Matt Dumba was interfering with Scott Darling in that scrum that was going on in front of the thing. And the league took a look at it and decided that for whatever reason, that shove that Matt Dumba gave Darling to keep him from getting back into the net wasn't enough to call it goaltender interference. I still don't agree with the call, but Canes ended up getting the win, so we'll just move on and take it and move on. And the big thing, or the surprising thing that came out of that game with me, had nothing to do with the game, was the attendance. Did you see the announced attendance?
Yes, you tweeted me on it. Otherwise, I would have never known.
Yeah, 18,680, which is actually the published capacity of that arena. So officially, the Hurricanes sold out a game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's big news.
I think people are gelling for this season. If you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, you've got to be upbeat and positive. They're out of the gates looking as a team that's going to be in the top 8 in the Eastern Conference. So I really believe that you're going to see great attendance this year. And I'm glad, as long as the Hurricanes don't sputter, and I don't think they will. Scott Darling is going to make a big difference.
Well, the telltale sign with the attendance that's going to happen is this Tuesday night when they play, which is actually tonight. Tonight when they play. Their next home game is tonight, and they are playing, I can't remember who they're playing tonight, but doesn't matter. Tuesday night, so weeknight games have traditionally been weaker for Carolina in terms of attendance, because where the arena sits is right in the heart, right in that Wade Avenue, I-40, always a mess.
Stadium. Yep.
Always a mess at rush hour, and of course the game starts pretty much right at the tail end of rush hour, and for that reason it tends to be a mess around that arena traffic wise, and a lot of people, especially if the team's not winning on the ice, a lot of people just don't want to bother with it. So I'm very interested to see, and I'll be looking into it, on what the attendance is going to be like tonight, where it's the first weeknight game of the year against Columbus, I believe, is tonight's game. I think. I don't even have it in front of me. But anyway,
no, that's correct. They're playing Columbus.
They are playing Columbus tonight.
Yep.
So it is a divisional rival. But anyway, I'll be interested to see. So the only other thing I wanted to note in that game was about Scott Darling. To me, it looked like, now, of course, he was playing in Chicago the last several years as a backup, so I didn't really get a chance to watch his game very much. I remember him when he was at Maine in college, but that was so long ago, and goaltenders develop over time. Their game totally changes. Like when Jimmy Howard looked completely different as a goaltender when he was at Maine than he did when he plays for Detroit. So,
right.
You can't judge what you saw. I remember Scott Darling when he was at Maine, but I didn't really follow him too much, even through his Chicago years, so I don't know his style of play. But he seemed a bit scrambly the other night. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't watch that game.
Okay. Positionally, I thought he was a bit scrambly. He was playing a bit more reactive rather than playing the angles, playing the position. Some goalies tend to try to be more athletic in their style of play rather than a technical, sound style of play. And it can get them in trouble sometimes. And it almost did a few times where Darling essentially made an athletic play at the puck, made a great save, but then the puck went back out in front to someone, where if someone would have been there, would have had a wide open net.
Right.
So that's something. It looked to me like he was trying to do a little bit too much. Granted, it was his first game as a starter, first game with his new team. He wants to impress everybody. I get that, but hopefully his game will settle down a little bit once we get a couple of games in here. That was the only concern I had with that. But other than that, kids played great. There's a lot of kids in this team. They're, I think statistically, they're the second youngest team in the league. I think only Toronto is. I don't know which team is younger, but it might be Toronto. Yeah, they're one of the youngest teams in the league, and their stars are starting to develop. We're getting some big names coming out of there, and I think this year at the All-Star game, we're not going to have to go to Justin Falk this time. I think somebody else is going to make the All-Star team for the Canes, and it may be more than one for the first time since they hosted the game back in 2011, that they might have more than one All-Star. So time will tell. All right, last team we need to talk about, the Rangers.
The Rangers won 2-0 on Sunday night. It was the third in a 3 out of 4 night stint that we had, and we did not do well until that game Monday night. And quite honestly, we didn't play very well in that game, but Lady Luck went our way on a couple things, and we were able to get sustained pressure after the first period. I would say from the second period on, we were able to get sustained pressure on Montreal, especially in the neutral zone and in Montreal's end of the net of the rink, which helped us. We didn't have that in the first 2 games, really. Toronto killed us. But it was an important win. 2-0, I'll take it. Henrik got a shutout and passed Turk Broda. He's number 16 now all time in shutouts. So, reason to be happy, and let's hope that it continues. Although tonight we've got another very tough game against St. Louis, and we'll see how that goes.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the transactions that have happened around the league. And first one I came up with, defenseman Mike Matheson signed an 8-year contract with the Florida Panthers on Monday. Financial terms of the contract were not released, but TSN reported it's worth $39 million total, $4.875 per year. Matheson, who's 23, is in his final season of his entry-level deal and could have become a free agent on July 1st of next year. Matheson is a +2 with 4 shots on goal in 2 games this season. He had 17 points, 7 goals, 10 assists in 81 games last year. He was selected by the Panthers with the 23rd overall pick of the 2012 NHL draft. Obviously, they want him sticking around for a while to sign an 8-year deal. Is it just me, or are there too many of these long contracts being signed?
There's quite a few of them, Wayne, don't you think?
And I think it has something to do with the quiet but steady talk of a possible looming lockout coming up. Some of these contracts, and I think it's like 4 years from now that it could happen. It's not for a little bit, but we're coming up on a CBA negotiation here pretty soon. And some of these contracts that are being signed beyond that time, I think these players are trying to get themselves lockout proofed, so to speak.
Right.
I don't know the details in particular. I haven't done the research, so I can't say for sure that this is the case. But, great. Matheson's a good player. He really is. I wouldn't put him as one of the elite defensemen in the league, but he's a decent player. And obviously, every team needs a good, solid top 4, and that's exactly what they have in Matheson playing for the Panthers.
Right.
All right. Next one, goalie Calvin Pickard was traded by the Vegas Golden Knights to the Toronto Maple Leafs on Friday for forward Tobias Lindbergh and a 6th-round pick in the 2018 NHL Draft. Pickard was selected by Vegas from the Colorado Avalanche in the NHL expansion draft on June 21st and was expected to be the number 2 goalie behind Marc-Andre Fleury. But Pickard was waived on Thursday after the Golden Knights claimed goalie Malcolm Subban off of waivers from the Boston Bruins on Tuesday. Subban is expected to back up Fleury. The 23-year-old is 0-2 and has allowed 6 goals on 22 shots in 2 NHL games. Pickard, who's 25, was 15, 31-2 with a 2.98 goals against average and .904 save percentage in 50 games with the Avalanche last season. He could compete with Curtis McElhinney to be the backup in Toronto behind Frederik Andersen. Lindbergh, who's 22, has 2 assists in 6 NHL games with the Leafs in 2015-16. So a lot going on here. First and foremost, the Golden Knights had to put him on waivers to make room for Subban. Subban got waived by the Bruins because they decided they were going to put him down to the minors and keep Hudobin, and they only wanted to keep 2 goalies on the roster, so they had to get rid of one, put Subban down. The Knights picked him up. Well, then they had too many goalies, so they sent Pickard down. He passed through waivers, but then somehow Toronto came into the mix, and Toronto picked up a new backup goalie. So little goalie roulette going on here.
Yeah, I'm sure Boston is not overly worried that they lost Malcolm Subban, though.
Well, I know they would have liked to get something for him, and I would be willing to bet that they shopped him around for quite some time, but there were no takers. So, yeah, Subban hasn't yet to develop into that, because Subban was a first-round draft pick.
Right.
Granted, it was deep in the first round. It was like 24th, 25th, somewhere in that neighborhood. But Subban was, in fact, a first-round draft pick, and he never really developed into being that next start. Now, some would say he never got a chance because Tuukka Rask is there, taking all the minutes away, but what little time he did play, he struggled in Providence for a good chunk of the time he was there. He definitely struggled in the couple of games that he played in Boston. Struggled mightily there. So I think Boston at this point said, you know what, we're at the end with Subban. So Subban gets a second chance. He actually gets to stay on the NHL roster, which is good for him. He'll be a backup to Marc-Andre Fleury, and he should get a decent look with Vegas. And if he gets to play, he's going to see a lot of rubber. So they're going to find out. Or they're going to find out real quick whether or not Subban is worth, if he's still that first-round pick that everyone thought he was.
Right.
And then as for Pickard, he gets a chance to compete for a backup job on a team that I'm sure he's happy, because he goes from Colorado, who wasn't going to win anything this year, to Vegas, who wasn't going to win anything this year, to Toronto, who's all of a sudden is a Stanley Cup contender. So Pickard is definitely happy.
Yeah.
Or he's, at least if he's on a winning team anyway. And he's shown in the past that he can play well when he's on a winning team. The numbers he put up in Colorado last year were dismal, but he had a horrible team in front of him. So I don't know how much you can blame those numbers on him. Okay, and that is all I had, unless you had anything else that came up.
No, those are two good stories, Wayne. We're talking about 3 days here since I haven't looked at the news lines today, but not a lot of days since the last podcast. So,
well, there's a couple small stories that have shown up. The Rangers claimed Adam Cracknell off of waivers. I don't even know what team he's coming from. And that's all I see in terms of waivers. And then there was another small minor trade that happened among minor league goalies. Dustin Tokarski ends up in Philadelphia for future considerations. But he's playing in their minor league team. Mm-hmm. So that's all there is for transactions. All right, let's move on to injuries. Defensemen Erik Karlsson and Johnny Oduya did not travel on Monday with the Ottawa Senators for their 3-game road trip through Western Canada. The Senators begin the trip today against the Vancouver Canucks tonight at 10 o'clock. And Coach Guy Boucher said it was too soon to rule them out for the rest of the trip. Ottawa plays the Calgary Flames on Friday and Edmonton on Saturday. Karlsson, a 2-time Norris Trophy winner as the NHL's top defenseman, missed the first 2 games recovering from foot surgery he had on June 14th. Oduya sustained lower body injury in the season opener, a 5-4 shootout loss to the Capitals last Thursday. They're both highly doubtful for Tuesday, but you never know. Might get a call and they might be on a plane and they're here, so I don't know, Boucher said. They're skating and they're going hard, so that's what I'm waiting to see the results of. So they didn't jump on the team plane, but they're not ruling them out for the weekend. They're probably not going to play tonight.
Right. My guess is they probably see how things go through the weekend. I guess what's their last game is against Edmonton. Yep. On Saturday, and if the bottom drops out, they might get on a plane. Otherwise, I wouldn't be surprised if after that game against Edmonton on Saturday that you see one or both of them return to the lineup. Yeah. That's my guess.
They both remain day-to-day at this point. So. All right, we had one suspension in the league in the last few days. St. Louis Blues, actually not really a suspension, it's a fine. St. Louis Blues defenseman Robert Bortuzzo has been fined $3,091 for the maximum allowable under the collective bargaining agreement for cross-checking New York Islanders forward Brock Nelson during NHL game number 33 in New York on Monday, October 9th. The Department of Players player safety announced earlier. The incident occurred at 3:56 of the second period. Bertuzzo was assessed a pair of minor penalties for cross-checking. So got a double minor. They decided to fine him. I didn't see the play, so I can't speak for whether or not I agree with it.
Right.
All right. And as far as honors for the week, Washington Capitals left winger Alex Ovechkin, Vegas Golden Knights goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury, and Philadelphia Flyers right winger Wayne Simmons have been named the NHL's 3 stars for the week ending October 8th. Ovechkin led for the league in goals and points with 7 goals and 7 points as the Capitals opened the season with 2 wins. That's 7 goals in 2 games. That's, man. Fleury went 2-0-0 with a 0.98 goals against average and a .973 save percentage as the Golden Knights opened the season with 2 wins. Simmons tied for second in the league in goals with 4, including 2 game winners as the Flyers began their season with 2 wins in 3 starts on the road. So all deserving players for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know that Alex Ovechkin, they're still talking about the 2 hat tricks being the most goals, and 7 goals in 2 games is the most since the very first year the league existed, 1917, 1918.
Yeah, it is. It's a 100-year record that he tied. Yep. Absolutely amazing.
With Joe Malone is the player that did it way back then.
Right.
All right. So that's all I had for suspensions/fines/honors, unless you have anything else to add to it.
No, sir. That's got it.
We're blowing through these this week. Well, it's only five days worth of stories, so
that's right.
I figured we would. All right. Let's move on to our power ranking for the week. This is our first one of the year, so it's going to look a little weird. Do we want to do all 30, or we just want to...
I'll leave that up to you, Wayne. It is your week to lead the discussion on the power rankings. So I'm going to leave that up to you. If you want to do all 31 teams, I'll be right there with you.
Here's what we do. We'll do all 31. I'll just blow through them real quick, and then we'll talk about some of the surprises, not so much surprises. All right?
All right.
So at 31, I have San Jose, 30 Nashville, 29 Dallas, 28 Buffalo, 27 Minnesota, 26 Arizona, 25 Montreal, 24 Winnipeg, 23 the Rangers, 22 Edmonton, 21 Florida, 20 Boston, 19 Columbus, 18 Ottawa, 17 Islanders, 16 Anaheim, 15 Pittsburgh, 14 Philly, 13 Calgary, 12 Tampa, 11 Colorado, 10 Vancouver, 9 Detroit, 8 Los Angeles, 7 Carolina, 6 Vegas, 5 New Jersey, 4 Washington, 3 Chicago, 2 St. Louis, 1 Toronto. So that's the power rankings I have for this week. And if you look at the standings, it's pretty close to what the standings is. Granted, the power rankings, the first few weeks are going to vary wildly between now and probably the first 6 weeks of the year.
Right.
After that,
get 15 games under their belts, collectively. And then you can make a good, well thought out list of the power rankings teams. And I guess around that time we'll start doing the top 16 teams. Yeah. But the first few weeks, you're right. There's gonna be a lot of jockeying and up and down. I don't expect to look on this list and see the Vegas Golden Knights at 6 when we start doing that. I really don't. They're playing out of their minds, and Marc-Andre Fleury is having a great start to his season.
He sure is. Yep. Yeah. He sure is. Yeah, I mean, some surprises at the top. Obviously, we would expect Chicago, Washington, Toronto to be up there, St. Louis, and we're expecting Carolina to be better than they have in the past. But to see Detroit up there, Vancouver, Colorado, all in the top 15, and then to see at the bottom, you see Dallas, Nashville, San Jose, Minnesota. Those are all expected to be playoff teams this year. So, things will change. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right, let's look ahead at some of the big games that we have coming up over the next. Now, I've estimated it's going to be, because our next podcast we're going to record probably on the next Thursday, so a week from this coming Thursday. So we're looking at, 9 days out?
9 days out. It's going to be October the 19th.
19th would be our next recording. So let's look at some of the games that are going to be happening between now and then. Obviously, tonight, some of the big games, we've got St. Louis and the Rangers. Columbus, Carolina should be a good one. Those are probably the 2 that jump out at me tonight anyway.
Right.
Tomorrow night, Pittsburgh, Washington.
Tonight is the opening night for the Vegas Golden Knights, by the way, too.
That's right. Their home opener.
Their first game at T-Mobile Arena.
I'll be watching that one.
Yeah.
For sure, because it's a late game.
Yeah. I'll be rubbing. I can't do it. I got to be up crack at dawn tomorrow. I'd be rubbing the sleep out of my eyes all day.
Yep.
So,
well, good thing is you can put it on DVR and watch it when you get home from work tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. As far as tomorrow night goes, there's really no games other than Pittsburgh-Washington that jump out at me on a league-wide scale anyway. Of course, the Bruins are playing also tomorrow night at Colorado. Pittsburgh-Tampa Bay on Thursday. That's going to be a good one to watch. Dallas-Nashville, where both teams are struggling and both teams are expected to be good. That's going to be a good one. Minnesota-Chicago.
That'll be a blazing game there, boy.
Yep.
Both teams that's an important game as to how the teams will perform during the season, because I expect both of those teams to make the playoffs.
Yep. So those are the headliners for Thursday. For Friday the 13th, Rangers-Columbus again. That's probably, of course, Vegas has their second overall game against the Detroit Red Wings that night.
Right. The Rangers-Columbus game is a nationally televised game, so that may be the marquee game for the day.
Yep. And then on Saturday, October 14th, of course, you have Hockey Night in Canada, so Toronto-Montreal. That's a rivalry that goes back decades. No matter what, those games are fun to watch, no matter how good both teams are. St. Louis-Tampa Bay, two strong teams there. That's going to be a good one to watch. Every team, it looks like Saturday night's another very, very busy night. You've got 14 games Saturday night, so only 3 teams won't be playing.
Right.
Nashville-Chicago also play that night. Those are the games that jump out at me. Columbus-Minnesota.
Right.
You see any others that jump out?
It'll be interesting to see how Carolina does up in Winnipeg, but that ought to be a good game.
Yep.
Two teams with a lot of youth.
Yep. Ottawa at Edmonton. That's another one that's kind of intriguing to me.
Yep.
In that one, 2 strong teams. See if that Ottawa shutdown 0-5 offense. I made a joke last night I was playing hockey last night. I'm like, we got to, I think we had a 3-2 lead late in the third, and one guy's yelling, "Oh, send one guy deep, one guy, everybody else stay back," trying to protect the lead, right? And I said, well, why don't we just pull the Ottawa 0-5 offense and just put all 5 guys across the blue line so that they can't get in the zone, just the way Ottawa does.
Put that trap on them.
Yeah, and it's funny, the team we were playing against got new uniforms, and it's the Rangers white uniform, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the logo in front is the KHL logo, the KHL League logo.
Oh, yeah.
But they changed the letters on it, and it's OTH, stands for Old Time Hockey. Of course, it's an over 40 league, so they named themselves Old Time Hockey. And I asked the captain, I said, "Did you get the KHL's permission to use their logo?" He didn't even know it was their logo. He was just... When they shop for the jerseys, that was a logo that they came across, and they're just using it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. All right, back to the games for the week. Sunday, October 15th, Boston at Vegas. That one intrigues me for obvious reasons. Other than that, there's really no nationally, there's no games that night that really intrigue me on a league-wide level in terms of 2 strong teams playing each other. Same thing for Monday night. There's only one game Monday night, Tampa-Detroit.
Right.
Next Tuesday, the 17th, Pittsburgh and the Rangers.
That'll be a great game.
Yep.
You'll see both teams starting to develop their push.
Yep.
You'll be able to make good judgments about either team. So
Toronto at Washington. That's probably going to be a game to watch right there, too. 2 very strong, offensively talented teams.
You're not kidding.
Carolina at Edmonton. 2 of the younger but up-and-coming teams in the league. That's pretty much it. Colorado, not really. Colorado at Nashville. That's a game that Nashville's got to have. Wednesday, the 18th, Chicago at St. Louis.
Yeah, that's going to be a powerful game there.
It's the game of the night there.
That is the game of the night. Yeah, that is actually that's a Wednesday night rivalry game on NBC Sports Network.
And a rematch of the 1993 Stanley Cup final that night. Montreal at LA.
Yeah.
I doubt any of the players from that 93 team from either team are still playing. All right, and then finally Thursday, October 19th, which will be the night that we record our next podcast, Edmonton at Chicago. That's going to be a very good game. Carolina continues their West Coast swing at Calgary. Islanders Rangers, that's always good, no matter how good.
Always a good game. Yep.
No matter how good the teams are. Vancouver Boston, rematch of the 2011 Stanley Cup final.
Right.
Tampa Bay at Columbus, 2 strong teams. New Jersey at Ottawa. If New Jersey continues to play well, that could be a good game. So, all right, let's move on already to our minor league minute.
All righty.
And
Wayne, I know yours is better. Yours is better than mine this week.
Is it? Okay.
I think it is.
I have an American Hockey League story. You have a KHL story.
I have another KHL. It's if you listen to this podcast, you know very well who this person is we're going to be talking about. So let me get mine out of the way. I want to hear yours.
Okay.
And I think it's a better minor league minute. But Wayne, I want to talk again real quickly. This is not a long minor league minute for me, about someone we know very, very well, one of the best players in the world, Sergei Mozyakin from Metallurg Magnitogorsk in the KHL. Once again, he has jumped up in the news, and I think a lot of it, too, has to do with the KHL press really wanting to get a guy up there onto the level of a Wayne Gretzky in their league. And so they're pushing Sergei Mozyakin, of course, who is, without any doubt, the Wayne Gretzky of the KHL. And my article that I have goes like this. It's called Penalty Trouble Sinks Admiral. Metallurg continued its return to form with a comfortable victory at Admiral, overcoming something of a bogey team along the way. And that's true. The Vladivostok Admiral there's really not having a good season at all. It was Magnitka's first win in Vladivostok for 3 years. The last 2 seasons saw Sergei Mozyakin and company shut out on the Pacific coast. This time, however, determined to make amends, Metallurg pressed from the start and earned a 5-3 power play in the 13th minute. It took just 5 seconds to convert that chance as Sergei Mozyakin smashed home Jan Kovar's feed for his 490th goal in Russian League action. This win gives Metallurg 4 wins in a row. And I just real quickly did some checking on that 490 goals. And you and I talked about this before the podcast started. And if you add things up, you might get close to 490 goals. But if you just look at his numbers since the KHL formed as a league, he has 295 goals.
You're right.
And
the 490 also includes the old Russian Elite League, which was the predecessor to the KHL. The Russian Elite League, I don't know if we've talked about it or if you know what happened back in when the KHL was formed, but basically every country had, of course, their own league back in the day, and the Russians had their league that was the Russian Elite League, and then there's the Swedish Elite League and the Finn, and so on and so on. Well, the people who run the Russian Elite League decided, you know what, we want to have a European-wide league that has all the best players in Europe playing it. Now, their idea was to keep all the best players from Europe over there in that league and say to hell with the NHL in terms of European players. It hasn't exactly gone that way because, of the well-documented money issues that exist in many of the KHL cities. But anyway, the KHL is not just a Russian league. There are teams in that league from outside.
Right. A lot of teams, actually. Yep.
So the KHL is trying to become a European-wide league, but, it's going to take time. But anyway, his time includes, his 490 goals includes those years in the old Russian Elite League as well as...
That's right. He used to play for Atlant Moscow. And I'm not sure if that's part of the old Russian Elite League, but he did play for them prior to going to Metallurg. Magnitogorsk is actually the city, Magnitogorsk in Russia.
Yep.
And so you and I have talked about that city. It's a steel town. It's very much like Pittsburgh. And the fans there that support that team primarily work in the steel industry. So it would be termed what we would call in this country a blue collar town,
right?
And very industrialized. But anyways, regardless of that, he does have close to we counted up 484 goals, if I'm not mistaken, Wayne, in his career in the Russian Elite League and in the KHL. So if by all accounts he is so far ahead of the second place guy, they may never catch him for a long time. He is easily the Wayne Gretzky of the KHL. And that's all I had to say this week.
Okay. All right, well, mine is an AHL story, as we mentioned before, and it goes as follows. After a pair of stellar outings on Friday and Saturday, forward Warren Foegele, or is it Foegele? I didn't look up the pronunciation of his name, and I should know it, too, has been named CCM/AHL Player of the Week for last week. The 21-year-old rookie netted a pair of goals in his pro debut on October 6th against the Hartford Wolfpack, including a game winner with a minute left in regulation. I should preface this by saying Warren Foegele plays for the Charlotte Checkers, who's who's the AHL affiliate of the Carolina Hurricanes. That's why I should know how to pronounce his name. I'm going to say Foegele until somebody corrects me otherwise. Foegele then followed up with another 2 goals the next night in Wilkes-Barre Scranton, including another game winner, both coming shorthanded. A third-round draft pick by Carolina in 2014, Foegele was named the OHL Playoffs MVP last season after helping lead the Erie Otters to a league title. Foegele is the 8th player in franchise history to earn AHL Player of the Week honors and the 4th forward, joining Alexei Sorella last season, Brock McGinn in 14-15, and Zach Boychuk in 2010-2011. And, quick note on Zach Boychuk, if you're not being followed by Zach Boychuk on Twitter, you're having a problem because he follows everybody. he's following over 100,000 people on his Twitter account.
Wow.
And he follows me, by the way. All right. So anyway, and the Erie Otters, another note. I don't know if you recognize that team.
Yes.
Alex DeBrincat, who's playing for Chicago. He played for them. Connor McDavid
played for them. That's right.
So, he's just the next guy. And from what I understand, Foegele played very well in Kane's camp. But because he is just a rookie and the Canes are already loaded with young talent that are already 2 or 3 years developed further ahead of him, that's why he ended up in the AHL. He aged out of junior. He's now playing in AHL. He's playing there probably this season. I would not be surprised if he gets called up either late this year or he makes a permanent stay in Carolina next year for the Hurricanes.
Very good.
So it's a player that we'll be watching the end of the month when we go down and see a game there.
That's right.
All right. That takes us to our College Hockey Minute.
That's right.
All right. And just a quick note on my own Maine Black Bears. They split against UConn this weekend. First game was an overtime 4-3 win, I think it was. I didn't write down the scores. And then they got blown out on Saturday night. So that game wasn't so good. They didn't play so well. But this week they host Miami of Ohio again at home at the Alfond Arena. So that should be a nice series there. As far as upsets that happened around the country and what I deem an upset, if you go back to last year and know about the College Hockey Minute, I tend to look at ranked teams that lost games. I don't look at every game and say, oh, that team should have been better than that. No, I'm talking just simply ranked teams that lost games, okay? This is who were ranked last week and lost, okay? Mm-hmm. On Friday night, number 19 Ohio State beat number 12 Wisconsin. Unranked New Hampshire beat number 5 ranked UMass Lowell. That was a pretty big upset. That was at UMass Lowell too. Number 10 Penn State lost to unranked Clarkson. Number 16 Union lost to unranked Michigan Tech. And on a mild upset, number 6 Minnesota Duluth beat number 3 Minnesota 4-3 in overtime. And a note on Minnesota Duluth: next weekend, not this coming weekend, but next weekend, Maine plays them in a pair of games. So that should be a good test for Maine right there. On Saturday night, number 5 UMass Lowell lost again to New Hampshire 3-1. Again at UMass Lowell. Oh no, this one was at New Hampshire. So they did a home and home in one weekend, and UMass Lowell lost both. Number 20 Western Michigan lost to Ferris State 3-2, and Ferris State is unranked. Number 7 North Dakota. Whoops, I did that. Oh, yeah, that's not an upset. I guess I wrote that one down wrong. Number 3, North Dakota beat Alaska Anchorage 3-2 in overtime. But they did tie Friday night. And then unranked Michigan Tech beat number 6, Minnesota Duluth 4-3 on Saturday. Looking ahead to this week, number 11, Penn State. Now, the games that I'm talking about on the looking ahead are just where two ranked teams are playing each other. So as far as this week, it's pretty light in that sense. Number 11, Penn State plays number 7, Minnesota. Number 10, Wisconsin is at Boston College, who's number 13. Number 1, Denver plays at number 4, Notre Dame, both Friday and Saturday night. Those will be 2 games to watch. Denver's the defending national champion. Number 11, Penn State is at number 7, Minnesota on Sunday. And then also on Sunday, number 13, Boston College plays at number 9, Providence. And they came out with a new poll this week. So at number 10 this week is Wisconsin. They were 12 last week. Number 9 is Providence, up from number 11. Number 8 is North Dakota. They're down from number 7. probably due to the tie and the barely win that they had. Number 7, Minnesota, is down from number 3. Number 6 is St. Cloud State. They're up from 9. Number 5, Minnesota Duluth, is down from 6. And number 4, Notre Dame, is up from number 8. And number 3, Harvard, is down from number 4. Now, Harvard plays in the Ivy League. They get a later start than everybody else, or there is an official Ivy League in college hockey. They're just Ivy League schools don't start playing until later on.
Right.
So Harvard hasn't played a game yet, and they probably won't play a game for another couple of weeks. Harvard, Princeton, some of those, I think Brown, some of those Ivy League schools, they don't get started right away. They play a shorter schedule than everybody else. So Harvard is going to stay about where they are until they start playing games. And then number 2 is BU at the same spot as last week. They got 5 first-place votes. And then number 1, once again this week, is Denver with 45 first-place votes. Same spot as last week. Okay, now we're at our picks of the week.
Yeah, we are at our picks of the week. We got there rather quickly.
I'll bring in the package. All right, well, we'll just move on. You'll just have to listen to the dog barking in the background. We got a package being delivered, so the dog goes nuts. Okay. Picks of the week. I have one about Jaromir Jagr, and you have one about Eddie Olczyk. So
yes, you want to keep it up where I go first?
Go for it.
And we'll talk about Jaromir Jagr last this week. You know, Wayne, one of my favorite guys to watch in the NHL. He makes NBC broadcasts worth watching. Eddie Olczyk, over the offseason, I think we may have reported it on this show, came down with colon cancer. And it's actually taking quite a bit of treatment for him. If you go on NHL.com, there's actually a video of Eddie, and I cannot remember that guy's name that calls the games with him in Chicago. I should know that. But the video is actually those two together on a broadcast talking about how Eddie is doing. So I encourage you to go on. I think it's probably about a 3 or 4 minute video and goes over what he's going through. But the name of the article is Eddie Olczyk makes brief appearance in Blackhawks booth during the cancer fight. Eddie Olczyk returned to the broadcast booth, however briefly, on Saturday night. The veteran NHL player and current Chicago Blackhawks broadcaster is battling colon cancer. He joined his TV partner, there it is, Pat Foley, for a quick update on his condition and to give out countless thanks to everyone who has supported him during his fight. Olczyk thanked his family, doctors, the Blackhawks organization, and fans who have reached out to him. The veteran of 16 NHL seasons says he has received an incredible outpouring of support, especially from Foley. Foley, who recently shouted out Olczyk while at Wrigley Field, says that fans have now shifted their questions towards him. The first question isn't about how the Blackhawks are going to be playing or how they're going to start out, but rather they're asking, how is Olczyk feeling? It was more than enough to have the pair feeling a little emotional. Hopefully the pair will be back together full-time sooner rather than later. And I'd like to add to that, you know, he was quite emotional during that video, especially in regards to his wife of 30 years. And I'd like to say that both my wife and I are praying for him. Doubtful he listens to this show, but if he is, there's a lot of support coming his way from all over the NHL. And we hope that he makes a speedy recovery and returns to broadcasting as soon as he can.
Yep. And I echo that sentiment as well. So, and I know he's primarily a Chicago guy, and he's a huge Blackhawk fan. We're not going to hold that against him, but but yeah, we hope he makes a speedy recovery and he can beat this thing for sure.
Right.
All right. Well, mine is on a much lighter note, and I just put the story away. All right, here we go. Mine is about Jaromir Jagr. And, of course, we talked about it last week. We talked about Jaromir Jagr signing with the Calgary Flames, and now the Traveling Jagrs are now looking for a new member for their group called Calgary Jagr. And I was watching Hockey Night Canada the other night, and in one of the intermissions, they were interviewing Jagr, and then they interviewed the Traveling Jagrs. Then all of a sudden, Jaromir himself made an appearance and kind of crashed in on their their little interview. And here's the story about it. Here's how it goes. The Traveling Jagers were looking for a new member to be Calgary Jager after the living legend signed with the Flames. So why not the real-life Jager? Well, he might not be available to sit in the stands during games, but he did solve their jersey problem. The group's namesake crashed an interview with the superfans during the first intermission of a game against the Winnipeg Jets on Saturday. This was the game I was watching. The group was extra excited about their hero signing in Calgary since that's where they are based. Jager said, "That's why I signed." He said it right on TV.
He's great, man.
Before the future Hall of Famer crashed the party with a brand new autographed jersey for the group, there were a couple of members in Flames practice jerseys. Jager, who seemingly is always in good humor, had a suggestion for the group's organizer and Dallas Jager, Trevor Freeman. Well, we needed one more guy, and I'm from Calgary now, so, as the group went wild, you know what? I'm going to try to play, and if I'm not good, I'm just going to stay here all year, and we can just going to party.
So he is the Calgary Jager.
So as of right now, until they find a member of a new Calgary Jager, Jaromir Jagr is going to be the Calgary Jager.
That is priceless.
And then, of course, I've got a link to the article. The article was from NHL.com, and it's got a link to that whole interview. It's a minute or so long, and it shows the whole group. And there was probably 15 of them there, because there were a couple of other guys that were there that were wearing Calgary practice jerseys that aren't normally part of the group. But the group was as large as I've ever seen it. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And they all had their Jager wigs on, and then Jaromir popped in on the interview.
That is funny.
I'm just loving that whole story. I can't get enough of it. And once again, we are continuing to extend an open invite to the Traveling Jagers. If they want to come and party in Raleigh, we'll be happy to host a tailgate in their honor.
Yeah.
At the Calgary. And you know what? I should look up the date. When is that? January 14th, 2018, 3 p.m.
Yes, sir.
So it's a weekend. So
it's a weekend, and it's a matinee game.
It's a matinee game.
Oh, my God. North Carolina barbecue. Can you imagine how much fun that will be?
Yeah, it's a Sunday afternoon game, so they can come in early enough to fly out after the game. We could do barbecue all day. Oh, man, could have fun. And it's quite warm, and, it's not going to be balmy weather in January 14th, but we could, if it's a sunny day, it'll easily be in the 50s.
Yeah.
So if the Traveling Jagers want to come get out of the cold, we invite them down. January 14th.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, at least the Calgary Jager will be in town.
That's right. The Calgary Jager will be here for sure. Hopefully he's not hurt.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is all we had for this shortened week. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. And once again, if you want to get engaged with the show, you can reach us through our Twitter handles, Wayne Halley 9. Steve is at sball504man. Our email is at feedback@thehockeynuts.com. Facebook page is at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. And then, of course, our YouTube channel is at thehockeynuts.com/YouTube. And, of course, our website is at thehockeynuts.com, where you can find links to all of our stuff, as well as you can watch the podcast right there on our website, and you can also watch it right on thehockeywriters.com. That's another place you can go for more hockey content. Podcasts and written articles are on that website. It's a great website as well for that. And of course, actual spellings of everything and links and everything else are available right in the show notes of this podcast. So you can reach us right there. So we welcome any and all engagement from any of the listeners that want to get in touch with us and want to take us in a different direction. We'd be happy to listen. Put it that way.
There you go.
All right. So I think that's it for this week.
Yes, sir. Wishing the Bruins all the best. Look forward to talking and reporting on or about the 19th, which is virtually 10 days from now.
Yep.
See how things are turning out for the teams then. It should be interesting to see what the power rankings will do. And
for sure.
We're on our way, Wayne.
Yep.
The season is well underway now.
Well underway. So until next time, we will talk to you later. All right. Have a good night, Steve.
Have a good night, Wayne. Good night now.
All right, welcome to this week's segment of the Fantasy Hockey Report. This is Wayne here again. Just wanted to start by just taking a look at some of the individual big performances of the week, and we're going to go look, since this is the first completed week of the regular season, we're going to go ahead and look at basically what has happened from the start of the season right up until the time of this recording, which is on Tuesday, October 10th. And to start with, let's take a look at some of the forwards that had big weeks last week. Alex Ovechkin had 3 games played, ended up with 7 goals, and actually all those goals came in the first 2 games. He had a quiet third game. Ended up with 46.7 points in our fantasy league. Next on the list, Vander Kane, in 3 games played, had 4 goals, 2 assists, total of 6 points, and he ended up with 39.2 points in our fantasy league. Brendan Saad had 6 points as well in 3 games, 4 goals, 2 assists, and he ended up with 36 points, 36.7 points in our fantasy league. And the difference between him and Kane ended up being, for the most part, the shots on goal. Kane took obviously more shots than Brendan Saad did. Next, Braden Point, 7 points in 3 games for 31.2 fantasy points, followed by Wayne Simmons, 3 games, 4 goals even, no assists, 29.7 fantasy points for the week. Let's take a look at the defenseman. Alex Pietrangelo had 5 points in 3 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, ended up with 43 points in our fantasy league. The reason his points are higher, obviously, is we put a value higher on defensemen who score points versus forwards to kind of help even out the fact that defensemen overall score less points than forwards. So when they do score points, it's worth more points, at least in the league that I run. Next on the list for defensemen is Jan Ruda, defenseman for Chicago. Ended up with 4 points in 3 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, for a total of 23.7 fantasy points this last week. Kevin Shattenkirk ended up with a goal and 2 assists in 3 games played, for a total of 23.7 fantasy points. And TJ Brody, defenseman with Calgary, ended up with 4 points in 3 games, total of 20.7 fantasy points last week. And then the number 5 guy last week, Jake Gardiner, defenseman for Toronto Maple Leafs, had 3 points in 3 games, a total of 20.7 fantasy points. Taking a look at the goalies, Mike Smith had the best performance of the week. 3 games played, was 2-1-1 with a 1.68 goals against average, 957 save percentage. That earned him 28.8 fantasy points in the week. Right behind him, Jake Allen, again 3 games played, all wins, and he had a 258 goals against with a 930 save percentage, 27.18 fantasy points last week. Frederick Anderson, also with 3 wins, 3.28 goals against average, 892 save percentage, 23.18 fantasy points last week, and most of that was due to the fact that he played more games than most everybody else. The 4th guy on the list, Semyon Varlamov, 2-0-1 in 3 games played, and he had a 1.00 goals against average with a 971 save percentage, and he ended up with 22.95 fantasy points for the week. And then 5th on the list, Jonathan Quick, 2-0-1, 0.5 goals against average, 983 save percentage, ended up with 22.32 fantasy points in our league. Now, the biggest thing that affects goalies in the league that I run is based on the number of shots that they face. So the better goalies ended up facing more shots, get more wins, and those are the ones that end up at the top of the list. But those are your 5 for last week. Now, taking a look at our league in particular, we had a shorter week last week, and it was only a 5-day week, but of course everybody did get their games in. Fight for Fighting ended up beating the Rat Bastards 155-135. Motherpuckers ended up losing to Hammer 4 126-95. Ice Holes beat the Kessel Run 144-113. Mr. Hockey ended up beating Pucks for Brains 118-111. Frozen Pogies lost to Mile 40 Saskatchewan Donut Shop 146-138. Sneaky Stat Weasels ended up winning 145-125 last week over the Battle Blades. And then the last game of last week, Purple Haze finished at 140 for the week, beating the Hageman Hilltoppers, who only ended up with 118. So that leaves us the standings after 1 week. We have in the Gretzky division, Fight for Fighting, Mile 40, Saskatchewan Donut Shop, and Hammer 4, all at 1-0. The Rat Bastards, Hageman Hilltoppers, Battle Blades, and Motherpuckers are at 0-1. In the Gordie Howe division, Ice Holes, Purple Haze, Sneaky Stat Weasels, and Mr. Hockey are all 1-0. Pucks for Brains, Frozen Pogies, and the Kessel Run are 0-1. Now, as far as free agent players that are still out there that have not been picked up, at least in our league anyway. John Moore had 14.3 points last week. Casey Cizikas from the New York Islanders had 13.7 points last week. He's still available. Nail Yakupov, who's had 3 points in 3 games for a total of 12.7 fantasy points. He's still available. Defenseman Chris Russell of the Edmonton Oilers also is available with 12.2 points last week. Veteran Jason Pominville, right winger with the Buffalo Sabres, he's available at 12.2 points. And Michael Ferland, left winger with the Calgary Flames, has 11.7 points, mostly due to the 11 shots on goal that he has in 3 games. So those are some of the players that are available in our league. You might want to check your league to see if they are also available. And that is all for the Fantasy Report this week. So until next week, good luck with your team.